The orc woman who kicked open the door of the Dusty Horn Tavern stood nearly 7 feet tall, her green skin glistening with road dust and sweat. Her small tusks jutting proudly from her lower jaw as she surveyed the room with eyes like molten amber. Every patron in the establishment froze mid-drink, mid-conversation, mid-breath, and the silence that followed her entrance was so complete that the creak of the door swinging shut behind her sounded like a thunderclap. "I need a husband," she announced, her voice carrying the rough consonants of the orcish tongue but perfectly intelligible nonetheless. "My clan has cast me out for refusing the match they arranged. By our law, I have 3 days to find a mate among humans or I become clanless forever. I am strong. I can hunt, fight, build, and survive anything this world throws at me. I will make a good wife." The stillness in the room somehow deepened. Men who had been reaching for their ale cups seemed turned to stone. The barkeep's mouth hung open, a dirty glass clutched forgotten in his meaty hand. At a corner table near the window, a grizzled farmer clutched his companion's arm so tightly the other man winced. Kael Orson had been sitting alone at a table near the back, a simple wooden cup of water before him, watching the evening crowd with the detached interest of someone who had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. He was 32 years old, weathered by sun and wind, his dark hair touched with premature gray at the temples. His hands bore the calluses of farm work, but his eyes held something else entirely, a depth that spoke of experiences far beyond tilling fields and mending fences. He looked at the orc woman, really looked at her, taking in the proud set of her shoulders despite the obvious exhaustion in her stance. The way her jaw was clenched against what he suspected was fear masked as defiance, the slight tremble in her fingers that she tried to hide by balling them into fists. She was magnificent and terrifying and clearly desperate, and something in Kael's chest tightened with an emotion he had not felt in years. The silence stretched on. Someone coughed nervously. A chair scraped as a man pushed back from his table, preparing to leave. The orc woman's amber eyes swept the room again, and Kael saw the moment hope began to crack in her expression, saw pride struggling against desperation. He set down his cup with a deliberate click that drew every eye in the room to him. "Why not me?" he said, and his voice was calm, certain, as though he had just agreed to help harvest someone's wheat rather than offering to marry an orc. The tavern erupted. Men shouted in shock, confusion, outrage. The barkeep dropped his glass and it shattered on the floor. 3 men leaped to their feet, chairs toppling behind them. "Kael, have you lost your mind? That's an orc, a monster. This is madness, boy." But Kael was already standing, was already walking toward the orc woman with measured steps, and the crowd parted before him like water before a ship's bow. He was not a particularly tall man by human standards, perhaps 5 feet and 10 inches, which meant he had to tilt his head back to meet the orc woman's eyes when he stopped before her. Up close, he could see more details. A scar that ran along her left forearm, old and pale against the deeper green of her skin. The intricate braiding of her dark hair, woven with small bone beads that clicked softly when she moved. The leather vest and trousers she wore, practical and road-worn but well-maintained. She smelled of pine needles and wood smoke and something earthy he could not quite identify. "You are serious," she said, and it was not quite a question. "I am," Kael replied. "I have a farm about 3 miles west of here, 20 acres, mostly wheat and vegetables. A house, barn, chicken coop, and a well that never runs dry. I live alone. I could use the help and you need a husband. Seems like a fair arrangement." Her amber eyes searched his face, looking for mockery, for cruelty, for whatever trap she clearly expected to find. "You know what I am." An orc woman who needs a husband, Kael said simply. And I'm a human man who needs someone to share the work. What's your name? She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Brenna. Brenna Merrock, or I was before I was cast out. Kael Orson, he said, and held out his hand. Brenna stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment. Her fingers, when she finally took his hand, were warm and rough with calluses, and her grip was strong enough that he felt the bones in his hand creak slightly. But she was careful, he noticed. She could have crushed his hand easily, but she measured her strength with precision. "This is insane," someone shouted from the crowd. "She'll kill you in your sleep. She'll rob you blind and burn your farm. Orcs can't be trusted." Kael turned to face the crowd, his hand still clasped in Brenna's. "Any man here want to volunteer instead?" he asked mildly. The shouting stopped. Men looked away, suddenly fascinated by their drinks, the floor, the ceiling beams. "Thought not," Kael said. He looked up at Brenna again. "You hungry, road weary?" "Both," she admitted. "Then let's get you fed and figure out the rest as we go. Barkeep, 2 bowls of whatever's cooking and some bread." The barkeep stared at him. "You want me to serve an orc?" "I want you to serve my future wife," Kael said, and his voice had gone cold and flat. "Unless you've got a problem with that." Something in Kael's eyes made the barkeep swallow hard and shake his head. "No problem. Coming right up." Kael led Brenna to his table, acutely aware of every eye in the room tracking their movement. She sat down carefully, the chair creaking under her weight, and folded her large hands on the scarred wooden surface. He reclaimed his own seat and studied her in the flickering lamplight. "So," he said, "tell me why your clan cast you out." Brenna's jaw tightened. "They wanted me to marry a warrior named Gromek. He is strong, brutal, respected. He has killed many humans in raids. I refused." "Why?" She met his eyes. "Because he is cruel. Because he enjoys causing pain. Because I watched him beat a human child nearly to death for stealing bread from his pack, and when I objected, he laughed." Her hands clenched into fists on the table. "My clan said I was weak, corrupted by human sympathies. They gave me a choice: marry Gromek or leave and never return. If I find a mate among humans within 3 days, I may keep my honor as a married woman. If not, I am clanless, which means any orc has the right to kill me on sight for the shame I bring." "That's barbaric," Kael said quietly. "That is orcish law," Brenna replied. "We are not a gentle people." The barkeep arrived with 2 steaming bowls of stew and a half loaf of dark bread. He set them down quickly and retreated without a word. Brenna stared at the food as though it might vanish if she looked away. "Eat," Kael said, pushing 1 bowl toward her. She did not need to be told twice. She tore into the stew with her fingers and teeth, barely pausing for breath, and Kael realized she must not have eaten in days. He ate his own portion more slowly, giving her time, not commenting on her hunger. When she finally slowed, having demolished the entire bowl and half the bread, she looked at him with something that might have been gratitude. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome." Kael finished his own stew and set the bowl aside. "So, we should probably talk about what this arrangement actually means." Brenna nodded slowly. "You need a worker, I need a husband. That is clear." "It's more complicated than that," Kael said. "If we're going to do this, we need to do it properly. By human law, we'll need to be married by a priest or magistrate. That might be difficult given the circumstances, but I know a priest in the next town over who might be willing. By orc law, what makes a marriage legitimate? Witnesses and a blood oath," Brenna said. The couple each cuts their palm and clasps hands, declaring their bond before others who can attest to it. Then the marriage is sealed when they share a home and bed. Kael felt his face heat slightly at that last part, but he kept his voice steady. "The blood oath I can do. The witnesses we have, everyone in this tavern can attest. The rest we can figure out as we go." "You would bleed for me?" Brenna asked, and there was wonder in her voice. "You who do not know me, you're in trouble and you asked for help," Kael said simply. "That's enough." "Why?" The question was barely a whisper. "Why would you do this? You could have stayed silent. Let me leave. Why risk everything for a stranger, for an orc?" Kael was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing patterns in a small puddle of spilled water on the table. "5 years ago, I was a soldier," he finally said. "I fought in the border wars against the orc clans. I did things I'm not proud of. I saw things that still wake me up at night. I watched men on both sides die for causes that seemed less and less clear the longer the fighting went on." He looked up at her. "When the war finally ended and I came home, I swore I'd never turn away someone in need again. Human, orc, elf, dwarf, doesn't matter. You needed help, so here I am." Brenna stared at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You are a very strange human, Kael Orson." "So I've been told," he said with a slight smile. "Now, do you want to do this blood oath tonight, or would you rather wait until we're at the farm?" "Tonight," Brenna said immediately. "I need this settled. I need to know I am safe." Kael nodded and stood. He raised his voice to carry across the tavern. "Anyone who wants to witness an orc marriage, gather around. Otherwise, mind your own business." Most of the patrons hastily looked away, but a few, driven by curiosity or shock or perhaps a sense of history being made, edged closer. The barkeep shuffled over, wiping his hands nervously on his apron. Kael drew a small knife from his belt, a practical tool he used for everything from cutting rope to eating tough meat. He held it up so everyone could see, then drew the blade across his left palm in one quick motion. Blood welled up immediately, dark red in the lamplight. Brenna watched with wide eyes. Then, slowly, reverently, she produced her own knife, a larger blade with a bone handle, and cut her own palm. Her blood was the same red as his, he noticed. Whatever other differences existed between humans and orcs, blood was blood. "By my oath and my blood, I take you as my husband," Brenna said, her voice formal, ritualistic. "I will defend your home as my home. I will honor your life as my life. I will stand beside you until death claims one of us. I swear this before witnesses, and before the spirits of earth and sky." Kael's heart was beating faster now, the reality of what he was doing crashing over him like a wave. But he did not hesitate. He clasped her bleeding palm with his own, feeling her warm blood mix with his. "By my oath and my blood, I take you as my wife," he said, improvising since he did not know the human equivalent. "I will share my home as your home. I will honor your life as my life. I will stand beside you until death claims one of us. I swear this before these witnesses, and before any gods or spirits that care to listen." Their hands remained clasped for a long moment, blood dripping steadily onto the tavern floor. Then Brenner released him, and Kael pulled a handkerchief from his pocket. He tore it in half and offered one piece to Brenna, who wrapped it around her palm with practiced efficiency. He did the same with his own hand. "It is done," Brenna said softly. "I am Brenna Orson now. My honor is intact." "Then let's go home," Kael said. The walk to the farm took nearly an hour in the darkness, lit only by a waning moon and the stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Kael carried a small lantern he had borrowed from the tavern, and Brenna walked beside him in silence, her longer legs easily matching his stride. The night air was cool and sweet with the scent of growing things, and somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted. "Tell me about your farm," Brenna said eventually, so Kael told her. He described the fields of wheat that would be ready for harvest in another month, the vegetable garden he tended near the house, the 6 chickens that provided eggs, the barn that needed some repair work on the roof. He told her about the creek that ran along the southern edge of his property, about the apple trees his grandfather had planted decades ago, about the small root cellar where he stored winter supplies. "It sounds peaceful," Brenna said. "It is," Kael agreed. "Quiet, lonely sometimes, but peaceful." "Will your neighbors accept me?" Kael considered the question carefully. "Some will, some won't. The nearest farm is owned by a family named the Harrises, about half a mile east. Good people, mostly. They might be wary at first, but they'll come around if you prove yourself trustworthy. There are a few others scattered around. Some fought in the wars and will have harder feelings. We'll deal with that as it comes. You make it sound simple." "It won't be," Kael said honestly, "but complicated doesn't mean impossible." The farm came into view as they crested a small rise. It was modest, just a simple wooden house with a stone chimney, a barn that leaned slightly to one side, and various other outbuildings scattered across the property. But it was well maintained. Kael made sure of that, and in the moonlight it looked almost picturesque. "This is it," Kael said. "Not much, but it's home." "It is more than I had an hour ago," Brenna replied quietly. Kael led her to the house and pushed open the door. Inside, everything was neat and spare. A main room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space, with a fireplace dominating one wall. A small bedroom lay beyond a simple wooden door, and a ladder led up to a loft space where Kael stored extra supplies. "I only have one bed," Kael said, feeling awkward suddenly. "I can sleep in the barn if you prefer, or I can set up bedding in the loft. Whatever makes you comfortable." Brenna looked around the space, taking in the simple furniture, the clean swept floor, the dishes drying beside a wash basin. "You keep a tidy home." "My mother's influence," Kael said. "She always said that chaos in the home led to chaos in the mind." "She sounds wise. Where is she now?" "Dead," Kael said quietly. "Fever took her when I was 20. My father died in the wars 2 years later." "I am sorry," Brenna said, and the sympathy in her voice sounded genuine. "Thank you." Kael stirred himself, pushing away old grief. "You must be exhausted. Take the bed." "I'll sleep in the loft tonight and we can figure out a better arrangement tomorrow." Brenna hesitated. "The blood oath is not complete until we share a home and bed. That is the Orc way. If we do not, there may be questions about the legitimacy of the marriage." Kael felt his face heating again. "I see. Well, the bed is large enough for 2, I suppose. We can keep to our own sides. I promise I won't do anything inappropriate." "I did not think you would," Brenna said. "You are too honorable for that." "You don't know me well enough to judge that," Kael pointed out. "I know you offered marriage to a desperate Orc stranger," Brenna countered. "I know you fed me and cut your own palm to seal an oath with me. That tells me what I need to know about your honor." She had a point. Kael showed her where the wash basin was, where she could find clean water from the pump outside, and where he kept extra blankets and linens. Then he busied himself with banking the coals in the fireplace and checking that the door was securely latched while she took care of her evening ablutions. When he finally entered the bedroom, Brenna was already lying on the far side of the bed, still fully clothed except for her boots, her back to him. The bed was indeed large enough for 2, a sturdy frame his grandfather had built with a corn husk mattress that Kael kept scrupulously clean. He removed his own boots and lay down on his side, careful to leave as much space between them as possible. "Kael," Brenna's voice came softly from the darkness. "Yes, thank you for everything. I will work hard to earn my place here. I will not be a burden." "You're my wife now," Kael said. "You're not a burden. Your family." She did not reply, but he thought he heard a catch in her breathing that might have been a suppressed sob. He lay very still, staring at the ceiling beams barely visible in the darkness, and wondered what in all the hells he had just gotten himself into. Sleep was a long time coming. Kael woke to the sound of chickens screaming. He bolted upright, heart pounding, momentarily disoriented by the empty space beside him where Brenna had been. Then his mind caught up with his body, and he lunged for the door, grabbing his old sword from where it hung on the wall. Outside, the early morning sun was just painting the sky pink and gold. And in the chicken coop, he could see Brenna grappling with something large and furry. A fox, he realized, or possibly a small wolf. The chickens were in hysterics, feathers flying everywhere. Kael ran toward the coop, but before he could reach it, Brenna had seized the predator by the scruff of its neck and literally thrown it over the fence. It landed with a yelp, scrambled to its feet, and vanished into the tall grass at a dead run. Brenna stood in the middle of the chicken coop, breathing hard, her hair coming loose from its braids and feathers stuck to her clothes. The chickens, recognizing that the danger had passed, slowly calmed down, though they continued to give Brenna suspicious looks. "Are you all right?" Kael called. Brenna turned to him, and he saw that she was grinning, her small tusks gleaming. "I heard the commotion and came to investigate. I hope I did not overstep by defending your chickens." "Overstep?" Kael laughed, some of the tension draining out of him. "You saved them, thank you. That fox has been a problem for weeks." "It will not return," Brenna said confidently. "I made sure it understood that this territory is defended." She climbed out of the coop and dusted feathers off her vest. "The chickens are unharmed. One laid an egg while I was in there, possibly from sheer panic." Kael found himself smiling despite the rude awakening. "Well, that's one way to start the morning. Have you eaten?" "Not yet." "I did not want to presume by taking your food without asking." "Brenna, you're my wife. Everything I have is yours now too, that includes food." Kael started back toward the house. "Come on, I'll make breakfast." "Fair warning, I'm not a great cook, but I can manage eggs and bread without poisoning anyone." They ate together in the morning light streaming through the windows, simple food but filling. Brenna ate, with the same intense focus she had shown the night before, and Kael wondered how long it had been since she had eaten regularly. When they were finished, he led her on a proper tour of the farm. He showed her the fields, explaining his crop rotation system and pointing out which areas needed the most attention. He showed her the barn, introducing her to his plow horse, an aging gelding named Copper who snorted suspiciously at Brenna, but accepted her offered hand after a moment. He showed her his tools, his seed stores, the repair work that needed doing. "This is good land," Brenna said, surveying the fields. "Well tended, you work hard." "I do what needs doing," Kael said. "It's better with two, though. Some jobs I've been putting off because they really need an extra pair of hands." "Then put me to work," Brenna said. "I am strong and I learn quickly. Teach me what you need me to know." So Kael did. He started her on simple tasks, watching to gauge her abilities. It quickly became apparent that Brenna had not been boasting about her strength. She could lift loads that would have staggered him, could work for hours without tiring, and approached each task with fierce determination. She was less familiar with farming specifically, her orcish upbringing having focused more on hunting and fighting, but she absorbed instruction like a sponge soaking up water. By midday, they had accomplished more work than Kael usually managed in 2 full days alone. They broke for lunch, eating bread and cheese beside the creek, and Kael found himself relaxing into Brenna's company. She asked intelligent questions about the farm, offered suggestions based on her own experiences with wilderness survival, and occasionally made dry observations that surprised him into laughter. "You're funny," he said at one point. Brenna looked at him in surprise. "Funny? You have a good sense of humor. I didn't expect that." "What did you expect? A savage brute who can only grunt and fight." Honestly, I didn't know what to expect, Kael admitted. I've never really talked to an orc before. During the war, we mostly just tried to kill each other. Brenna was quiet for a moment, trailing her fingers in the cool creek water. I fought in those wars too, she said softly. On the other side, I was young, barely old enough to carry a blade. My clan sent me because they said I needed to prove my worth. Did you? Kael asked. Kill humans, I mean. Yes. The word was barely a whisper. I told myself they were the enemy, that it was kill or be killed, but I remember their faces, Kael. I remember every single one. So do I, Kael said. He was looking at his hands, at the permanent scars and calluses. The ones I killed. The ones I watched die. Sometimes I think we were all just pawns in someone else's war, bleeding and dying for reasons that made sense to kings and chieftains but never quite made sense to the people doing the fighting. You hate me? Brenna asked. For fighting against your people? No, Kael said, and he found he meant it. I'm tired of hating. I did enough of that during the war to last a lifetime. Besides, you're my wife now. That's got to count for something. Brenna looked at him with those luminous amber eyes. You are a very strange human, Kael Orson. You said that last night, he pointed out. It bears repeating. They spent the afternoon working on the barn roof, which had been leaking in the last rain. Brenna's height and strength made the work much easier, and by evening they had replaced all the damaged shingles and reinforced the support beams. They were both filthy, covered in dust and sweat, but there was a satisfaction in the work that Kael had not felt in a long time. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Kael saw a figure approaching from the east. He recognized the walk before he could make out the face. Thomas Harris, his nearest neighbor, a broad man with a perpetual sunburn and a tendency toward blunt speech. Company, Kael said quietly to Brenna. Probably heard about last night and came to investigate. Brenna tensed. Trouble, maybe. Let me do the talking. Thomas stopped at the edge of Kael's property, his eyes going wide when he saw Brenna standing beside the barn. So it's true, he said. You actually went and married an orc. Her name is Brenna, Kael said calmly. And yes, we were married last night by orc rites. We'll be making it official with a human ceremony as soon as I can arrange it. Thomas looked at Brenna the way someone might look at a dangerous animal, wary and ready to bolt. Kael, man, what are you thinking? That's an orc. They killed your father. They killed a lot of good men. And we killed a lot of orcs, Kael said. The war is over, Thomas. It's been over for 5 years. Brenna needed help and I offered it, that's all. That's not all and you know it, Thomas said. He was getting agitated now, his face reddening. You've brought a monster onto your land right next to my family. My children could be in danger. Brenna flinched as if struck, but she kept her silence, letting Kael handle it as he had asked. Brenna is not a monster, Kael said, and there was steel in his voice now. She saved my chickens from a fox this morning. She's been working alongside me all day without complaint. She's done nothing to threaten you or anyone else. Not yet, Thomas said. But it's in their nature, Kael. Orcs are violent, everyone knows that. So are humans, Kael shot back. I've seen humans do things that would make your blood run cold, Thomas. And I've known humans who were gentle and kind. The same is probably true of orcs. You can't judge an entire race by their worst members any more than you'd want orcs judging all humans by the worst of us. Thomas shook his head, backing away. I hope you know what you're doing, Kael. For all our sakes. But if that creature causes trouble, don't expect any help from me. He turned and strode away into the gathering dusk. Kael let out a long breath, feeling the tension drain from his shoulders. When he looked at Brenna, he saw that she had her arms wrapped around herself, her face carefully blank. He's wrong, Kael said quietly. He's scared, Brenna replied. Fear makes people say things, do things I understand. You shouldn't have to, Kael said. Nobody should have to accept being called a monster. But I am a monster, Brenna said, her voice flat. In his eyes, in most humans' eyes, that is the reality we must live with. Then we'll change that reality, Kael said. One day at a time, one person at a time. Starting with Thomas if we can. Brenna looked at him for a long moment, something complex and unreadable moving in her eyes. Then she nodded slowly. One day at a time, she repeated. I can do that. They went inside as full darkness fell and Kael heated water for them both to wash. They ate a simple dinner. And then, with an awkwardness that had somehow not been present the night before, they prepared for bed. Kael gave Brenna privacy to change into a spare shirt he offered her for sleeping, and when he finally entered the bedroom, she was already under the covers, leaving his side of the bed carefully accessible. This time, sleep came easier for both of them, exhaustion from the day's work pulling them under like a gentle tide. The next several days fell into a pattern. They would wake early, take care of the morning chores, work in the fields or on various maintenance projects until midday, break for lunch, then continue working until evening. Brenna proved to be an incredibly fast learner, and soon she was handling tasks without needing instruction. More than that, she brought her own expertise to the farm, teaching Kael tracking techniques she had learned as an orc hunter, showing him how to preserve meat using methods her clan had perfected, identifying edible plants in the surrounding woods that he had never known were safe to eat. They talked while they worked, small conversations at first, then deeper ones. Kael told her about his childhood, about his parents, about the dreams he had harbored before the war had interrupted everything. Brenna told him about growing up in an orc clan, about the strict hierarchies and brutal tests of strength, about the complicated honor system that governed every aspect of orcish life. It sounds hard, Kael said one afternoon. They were weeding the vegetable garden together, the sun warm on their backs. It was, Brenna agreed. But it was also all I knew. The clan was everything, family, identity, purpose. To be cast out, to be clanless, that is the worst fate an orc can imagine. She pulled up a stubborn weed with a vicious yank. Or it was. Now I am not so sure. This life here, it is hard work, but it is peaceful. No one is testing me constantly. No one is waiting for me to show weakness so they can challenge me. I can just be. Do you miss it? Kael asked. Your clan. Sometimes, Brenna admitted. I miss my mother, though she was the one who pronounced my exile. I miss my sister who wept when I left. I miss the songs around the evening fire and the feeling of belonging somewhere. She paused, considering, but I do not miss the cruelty. I do not miss watching the strong abuse the weak and being told that is how things should be. I do not miss being told that mercy is weakness and kindness is corruption. Then maybe you're better off here, Kael said. Maybe, Brenna said softly. Time will tell. On the 5th day after their marriage, they had their first real test. Kael had gone into the village to buy supplies, leaving Brenna to work on reinforcing the fence around the vegetable garden. He had been gone perhaps 2 hours when he returned to find 3 men standing in his yard, facing off against Brenna, who had positioned herself between them and the house. Kael recognized them immediately. Luke Harris, Thomas's older brother, and 2 of his friends, all veterans of the war, all known for their hard feelings toward orcs. Luke was holding a thick wooden club and the other 2 had knives at their belts. There a problem here? Kael asked, his voice carefully neutral as he climbed down from the wagon. Problem is you've got an orc living on your land, Luke said without taking his eyes off Brenna. That makes it a problem for all of us. Brenna is my wife, Kael said, moving to stand beside her. She has every right to be here. She's got no rights, Luke spat. She's a monster. How long before she cuts your throat in your sleep? How long before she brings her clan down on all of us? My clan cast me out, Brenna said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was level, controlled. I have no clan. I am no threat to anyone. You're a threat by existing, one of Luke's friends said. Orcs killed my brother in the war. Orcs burned the Millerson farm. You think we're just going to forget that? No one's asking you to forget, Kael said, but the war is over. Peace was declared by people a lot more important than us. If you've got a problem with orcs living among humans, take it up with the magistrate or the king's representative. Don't come onto my land and threaten my wife. Or what? Luke challenged, hefting his club. You going to fight all three of us to defend that thing? Kael felt something cold settle in his chest, the old soldier's instinct that had kept him alive through countless battles. If I have to, he said quietly. You do not, Brenna said. She stepped forward, placing herself fully between Kael and the three men. If you want to hurt someone to make yourself feel better about the war, then hurt me. I fought in those battles. I killed humans. If you need someone to pay for that, let it be me. But leave Kael alone. He has done nothing but show kindness to someone in need. Luke stared at her, clearly not expecting this. You think I won't hit you just because you're a female? I think you will do what you feel you must do, Brenna said, just as I will. For a long moment, no one moved. The afternoon sun beat down on them all, and somewhere a crow cawed harshly. Then Thomas Harris came running up the road, red-faced and breathing hard. Luke, stop, Thomas shouted. What the hell are you doing? Teaching this orc a lesson, Luke said, by attacking your neighbor. Thomas demanded. He might have issues with Brenna's presence, but apparently he drew the line at violence. This is Kael's land, his business. You don't get to come here and cause trouble. You said yourself she's dangerous, Luke protested. I said I was worried, Thomas corrected. That's not the same as saying we should attack her. Damn it, Luke, use your head. If you assault Kael's wife, that's a crime. The magistrate will have you in chains. Luke wavered, clearly torn between his anger and his brother's logic. Finally, he lowered the club. This isn't over, he said to Kael. You're making a mistake harboring that creature. Only mistake I see is you trespassing on my property, Kael said coldly. Leave, now, and don't come back unless you're invited. Luke and his friends left, though not without dark looks and muttered threats. Thomas lingered, looking uncomfortable. Thank you, Kael said, meaning it, for stopping them. Thomas shrugged. I don't like the situation, but I'm not about to stand by and watch my brother commit assault. He looked at Brenna, who was standing very still, her hands clenched at her sides. You could have fought them. You're big enough and strong enough that you probably could have won. Yes, Brenna said simply, but you didn't. Why? Because that would have confirmed everything you believe about orcs, Brenna said, that we are violent, that we are dangerous, that we cannot be trusted. If I had fought back, Kael would have been blamed for bringing a savage into your community. This way, at least, they were the aggressors and everyone knows it. Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Maybe you're not what I thought you were, he said. He turned and followed his brother down the road. As soon as he was out of sight, Brenna's legs gave out. She sat down hard in the dirt, her whole body shaking. Kael dropped to his knees beside her, hands hovering uncertainly. Brenna, are you hurt? No, she gasped. I am fine. I just need a moment. You were terrified, Kael realized, but you stood up to them anyway. Of course I was terrified, Brenna said, and there was a slightly hysterical edge to her laugh. They wanted to hurt me, to kill me maybe, but I could not let them hurt you. You are my husband. Protecting you is my responsibility. Just as protecting you is mine, Kael said firmly. He sat down beside her in the dirt, not caring about the dust on his clothes. We protect each other. That's how this works. Brenna looked at him, and in her eyes he saw vulnerability she had never shown before, the careful walls she kept around herself cracking to reveal the fear and loneliness underneath. "I am scared, Kael," she whispered. "I am scared that I will always be a monster in people's eyes. That I will bring you nothing but trouble, that you will come to regret offering me your hand." "Hey," Kael said softly. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and when she did not, he took her much larger hand in both of his. "I don't regret it, not for 1 second. You have worked harder in these 5 days than I dared hope. You have been kind and patient and brave. You are not a monster, Brenna. You're my wife, and I'm glad you're here." A single tear tracked down her green cheek, and she wiped it away quickly, almost angrily. "Orcs do not cry." "Everyone cries sometimes," Kael said. "Even big, tough orc women who can throw wolves over fences." That surprised a watery laugh out of her. "It was a fox, not a wolf." "Still impressive," Kael said. He stood and offered her his hand. "Come on. Let's get inside and figure out what we're having for dinner. I think we've both earned something better than bread and cheese tonight." Brenna took his hand and let him help her up, though they both knew she did not need the assistance. As they walked toward the house together, their hands remained clasped, and neither of them seemed inclined to let go. That night, they lingered over dinner, talking about inconsequential things, both of them needing the normalcy after the afternoon's tension. When they finally made their way to bed, Brenna hesitated at the bedroom door. "Kael, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why did you really offer to marry me? The truth this time, not the noble answer about helping those in need." Kael considered the question carefully, knowing she deserved honesty. "I was lonely," he finally said. "I've been lonely since I came back from the war. This farm, it's peaceful like I said, but it's also empty. Just me and my thoughts and my guilt about things I can't change. When you walked into that tavern, you were desperate and fierce and proud, and something in me recognized something in you. We're both damaged by that war, both trying to find a way to live with what we've done and what we've lost. I thought maybe we could do that better together than alone." "So I am not just charity to you," Brenna said. "Not just a good deed." "You were never just charity," Kael said. "You're a person in your own right, Brenna. A person I'm coming to know and respect. A person I'm honestly glad to have in my life." She smiled then, small and tentative but genuine. "I am glad too," she said softly. "Good night, Kael. Good night, Brenna." The next morning brought unexpected visitors. Kael was outside checking the wheat, which was almost ready for harvest, when he saw a small group approaching from the village. For a moment his body tensed, expecting more trouble, but then he recognized the figures. Father Marcus, the elderly priest who had baptized him as a child. Martha Green, the village healer. And surprisingly, young Sarah Cooper, who ran the village bakery. Brenna emerged from the house, wiping her hands on a cloth, and stopped short when she saw them. "Kael Orson," Father Marcus called out in his reedy voice. "Might we have a word?" "Of course, Father," Kael said, walking over to meet them with Brenna at his side. "What brings you out this way?" "We heard about the trouble yesterday," Martha said bluntly. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Luke Harris and his idiot friends trying to intimidate your wife." "Word travels fast," Kael observed. "It always does in a small village," Father Marcus said. "We came to see if you were both all right and to offer our support." Kael blinked in surprise. "Your support?" "Not everyone in the village is as narrow-minded as the Harris brothers," Sarah said. She was looking at Brenna with open curiosity rather than fear. "Some of us think what you did was brave, noble even, offering marriage to a stranger in need. Some think you are insane," Martha added with characteristic bluntness. but I've been alive long enough to know that sometimes the insane choice is the right one. Besides, Thomas told everyone how your wife could have fought back yesterday, but chose not to. That shows restraint and wisdom, which are not qualities typically associated with monsters. Brenna looked completely overwhelmed, her amber eyes wide. You came all this way to tell us this. We came to formally welcome you to the community, Father Marcus said. If you'll have us, I'd like to perform a proper human marriage ceremony. Legally binding, recognized by the church and the crown. Your orc rights may satisfy orc law, but if you're going to live among humans, it would be better to have both. I would like that very much, Brenna said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. And I brought you a loaf of my honey wheat bread, Sarah added, producing a cloth-wrapped bundle. As a wedding gift, it's not much, but it's the best I make. It's perfect, Kael said, accepting the bread. Thank you, all of you, this means more than you know. They set the ceremony for the following Sunday, giving Kael time to spread the word to anyone who might want to attend. Father Marcus promised to handle the legal paperwork with the magistrate, and Martha offered to help Brenna make something appropriate to wear, since the orc woman owned only her practical traveling clothes. After the visitors left, Kael found Brenna sitting by the creek, staring at the water with tears streaming silently down her face. Brenna, he said, concerned. What's wrong? Nothing is wrong, she said, her voice choked. That is the problem. I expected hatred, expected fear and rejection. I expected to be tolerated at best. But those people, they were kind. They welcomed me. I do not know how to process this. Kael sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. Not everyone is going to be like them, he warned gently. There will still be people like Luke who hate you for what you are. But there are also good people in the world, humans and orcs alike. You just have to give them a chance to show themselves. I am not used to kindness, Brenna admitted. In my clan, everything was earned through strength and dominance. Compassion was seen as weakness. Helping others was foolish unless it benefited you directly. Your world, the human world, it is so different. Not all humans are kind either, Kael reminded her. You've seen that too. But maybe, between your strength and my compassion, between orc and human ways, we can find a balance. Be better than either of us would be alone. Brenna leaned against him slightly, a gesture of trust and affection that made Kael's heart beat faster. I would like that, she said softly. They sat by the creek for a long while, watching the water flow past, and Kael realized with some surprise that he was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy, in a way he had not been since before the war. This strange marriage that had started as a desperate bargain was becoming something real, something worth protecting. The days leading up to the ceremony were busy. Martha came by twice to take measurements and work on a dress for Brenna, muttering the whole time about trying to fit proper sleeves on arms that muscular. Sarah delivered another loaf of bread and stayed for tea, chatting with Brenna about baking and recipes and village gossip with an ease that seemed to surprise them both. Even a few of the other farmers stopped by on various pretexts, clearly trying to get a look at the orc woman who had married Kael Orson, and most of them left looking thoughtful rather than hostile. Luke Harris and his friends stayed away, but Kael heard rumors that they were stirring up trouble in the village, trying to get people riled up against Brenna. So far it did not seem to be working, but Kael remained watchful. On Saturday evening, the day before the ceremony, Kael and Brenna worked together to harvest the wheat. It was hard, sweaty labor, but they fell into an easy rhythm, Kael cutting the stalks with his scythe while Brenna bundled them and set them aside to dry. As the sun began to set, painting the cut field in gold and amber light, they paused to rest. Tomorrow you will be my wife twice over, Kael said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Once by orc law and once by human law. Does that feel strange to you?" "Everything about this feels strange," Brenna admitted. "But good strange, like a dream I am afraid to wake from." She looked at him, and something in her expression made his breath catch. "Kael, I need to tell you something." "All right. This marriage, when we started it, it was practical. A solution to my problem, a helping of yours with the farm. But for me, it is becoming more than that." She took a deep breath, clearly working up her courage. "I am developing feelings for you. Real feelings. Affection and respect and something deeper I do not have words for. I thought you should know, even though our arrangement does not require such things." Kael's heart was hammering in his chest. "Brenna, I have something to tell you too." She waited, her amber eyes locked on his face. "I'm falling in love with you," Kael said simply. "I don't know exactly when it started. Maybe when you defended me to Luke and his friends. Maybe when you sat by the creek and let me see your fear and vulnerability. Maybe it was even earlier, when you walked into that tavern like a warrior queen and demanded what you needed. But it's there, and it's growing stronger every day." For a moment, Brenna just stared at him. Then, moving slowly, giving him every chance to pull away, she reached out and cupped his face in her large, calloused hand. "May I kiss you?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Please," Kael breathed. Their first kiss was awkward, both of them uncertain how to navigate the difference in their sizes and the presence of her small tusks. But they figured it out, tilting their heads just so, and when their lips finally met properly, something inside Kael ignited. The kiss deepened, became more confident, and when they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. "Wow," Kael said eloquently. Brenna laughed, the sound bright and joyous. "Wow indeed." They finished the harvest as the stars began to appear, stealing kisses between bundles of wheat. And when they finally went inside, they held each other in the big bed not from obligation or tradition, but because neither of them wanted to be apart. The wedding ceremony took place in the village square, since Father Marcus's small chapel could not accommodate everyone who wanted to attend. Kael was shocked by how many people showed up. At least 30 villagers, far more than he had expected, gathered to witness the human marriage of Kael Orson to Brenna Murrock, turned Orson. Brenna wore the dress Martha had made, a simple but elegant design in deep blue that complemented her green skin beautifully. Martha had opted for short sleeves and a practical cut that allowed for Brenna's muscular build while still looking feminine. Brenna's hair was braided with flowers instead of bone beads, and she looked both nervous and radiant. Kael wore his best clothes, which admittedly were not much, just clean trousers and a shirt his mother had embroidered years ago. But he had shaved carefully and combed his hair, and from the way Brenna looked at him, he thought he must pass muster. Father Marcus performed the ceremony with solemn dignity, treating Brenna with the same respect he would show any bride. When he asked if anyone objected to the union, there was a tense moment of silence. Then Luke Harris, who had shown up despite not being invited, stepped forward. "I object," he said loudly. "This is wrong, unnatural, an insult to every human who died in the wars." Before Kael could respond, Thomas Harris grabbed his brother's arm. "Shut up, Luke. You don't speak for everyone." "I speak for decent folk who don't want monsters in our village," Luke shot back. "Then you speak for yourself alone," Martha Green said sharply. "The rest of us have eyes to see and minds to think. That woman has done nothing but work hard and act with restraint. More restraint than you've shown, I might add." Several other villagers murmured agreement. Sarah Cooper stepped forward. "I've spoken with Brenna. She's kind and intelligent and deserves a chance at happiness, just like anyone else." "If you can't see that, Luke Harris, then you're the one with the problem, not her." Luke looked around at the gathering, clearly expecting more support than he was finding. His face reddened with anger and embarrassment. "You are all fools," he spat and stalked away. Father Marcus waited until the disturbance had settled, then smiled at Kael and Brenna. "Anyone else?" he asked mildly. No one else objected. The ceremony continued, and when Father Marcus pronounced them husband and wife, telling Kael he could kiss his bride, Kael did so with enthusiasm. The crowd cheered, and for a moment, everything felt perfect and right. They held a small reception in the village square, people bringing food and drink to share. Kael watched Brenna laugh at something Sarah said, watched her speak earnestly with Martha about growing herbs, watched her accept congratulations from people who weeks ago would have run from her in fear. His heart felt so full he thought it might burst. As the evening wound down and they prepared to head home, Thomas Harris approached them. He looked uncomfortable but determined. "I owe you both an apology," he said without preamble. "I judged you unfairly, Brenna, based on fear and old hatred. I was wrong. You've proven yourself to be a good neighbor and a good person. I hope you can forgive me." Brenna studied him for a long moment, then offered her hand. "I forgive you," she said. "Fear is a natural thing. What matters is what we do with it." Thomas shook her hand, relief evident on his face. "If you ever need help with anything at all, you come find me. That's a promise." "Thank you," Kael said sincerely. "That means a lot." They walked home under the stars, hand in hand, and this time when they entered their bedroom, there was no awkwardness or uncertainty. They came together as husband and wife in truth, and the love they made was tender and passionate and real. Afterwards, lying tangled together in the moonlight streaming through the window, Brenna traced patterns on Kael's chest with one gentle finger. "I never thought I could have this," she said softly. "Love, home, acceptance. I thought I would be running for the rest of my life, always alone, always an outsider." "You're not alone anymore," Kael promised, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "You're home. You're mine and I'm yours, and nothing is going to change that." "I love you, Kael Orson," Brenna whispered. "I love you too, Brenna Orson," Kael replied. "Now and always." They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and for the first time in her life, Brenna dreamed of the future with hope instead of fear. The following weeks settled into a comfortable routine, made richer by the deepening bond between them. The harvest was completed and brought in, the wheat stored safely in the barn for sale or use through the winter. Brenna's vegetable garden flourished under her attentive care, and she began experimenting with preserving and pickling based on recipes Martha had taught her. The village gradually grew accustomed to seeing the tall orc woman working alongside her human husband. Children, who had initially hidden behind their parents' legs, began to wave shyly when Brenna came to town. Shopkeepers greeted her by name. She was becoming part of the community in a way that seemed miraculous given how recently she had been a desperate outsider. Not everyone accepted her, of course. Luke Harris remained hostile, though he kept his distance after the public rebuke at the wedding. A few of the older villagers maintained their disapproval, viewing the marriage as an aberration that should not be encouraged. But they were the minority, and even they could not deny that Brenna and Kael made a good team. One morning in late autumn, about 2 months after their wedding, Kael woke to find Brenna already up and sitting by the window, staring out at the frost-touched fields with a troubled expression. "Something wrong?" he asked, joining her. "I had a dream," Brenna said slowly. "About my clan. About my mother and my sister." "A good dream, strange dream," Brenna corrected. "My sister Thora was calling for me. She seemed frightened. It was so vivid, Kael, like I was really there." Kael frowned, something tickling at the back of his mind. "Orcs have some magic, don't they? Connection to spirits and nature." Some do, Brenna admitted. Shamans and those with the gift can sometimes send messages through dreams, but Thora never had that gift. At least, she never did before I left. Maybe she developed it out of desperation, Kael suggested. If she needed to reach you badly enough. Brenna turned to look at him, conflict clear in her face. Even if she did, what can I do? I am cast out. If I return to clan lands, they have the right to kill me. Unless you go with a husband, Kael said, the idea forming as he spoke. You're married now by both orc and human law. That should fulfill the requirements that saved your honor, right? Maybe things have changed. Or maybe it is a trap, Brenna said. A way to lure me back so they can punish me properly. Then we'll be careful, Kael said. But if your sister truly needs help, can you ignore it? Brenna closed her eyes, pain etched across her features. No, she whispered. I cannot. She is my blood, my baby sister. If she is in danger, I have to try to help. Then we'll go, Kael said firmly. Together. You're not alone in this anymore, remember. It will be dangerous, Brenna warned. My clan is not like your village. They will not welcome you with open arms. You could be killed just for being human. But I'll be there as your husband, which gives me some protection under orc law, right? Some, Brenna admitted. A bonded mate has status, even a human one. But that status only extends so far if the clan decides they want you dead. Then we'll have to be persuasive, Kael said with more confidence than he felt. When do we leave? They spent the rest of the day preparing. Kael arranged for Thomas Harris to check on the farm while they were gone, a task Thomas accepted with the gravity it deserved. They packed supplies, warm clothes, weapons just in case. Brenna tried to teach Kael some basic orcish phrases, words that might keep him from accidentally insulting someone or triggering a challenge. They set out the next morning, heading northwest toward the mountains where Brenna's clan made their home. The journey would take at least 3 days on foot, longer if the weather turned bad. Kael had suggested taking Copper, his plow horse, but Brenna pointed out that the terrain would be too rough for the old gelding. So they walked, setting a steady pace that ate up the miles. As they traveled, Brenna told Kael more about her clan, painting a picture of a harsh but tightly knit community living in caves and rough shelters in the mountain foothills. The Murrock clan numbered perhaps 200 orcs, led by a chieftain named Gorthan who ruled through strength and cunning. Brenna's mother, Karga, was one of the chieftain's advisors, a position of respect but also danger. What about your father? Kael asked as they camped the first night. Dead, Brenna said, poking at their campfire with a stick. He was killed in a clan challenge when I was young. I barely remember him. My mother raised my sister and me alone, which is not easy in a society that values strength above all else. She had to be twice as fierce, twice as unyielding to maintain her position. She sounds formidable. She is, Brenna said quietly. She is also the one who cast me out. I do not know if she will be glad to see me return or angry that I dare show my face. Kael reached over and took her hand. Whatever happens, we face it together. Brenna squeezed his fingers gently. You are too brave for your own good, human. Says the orc woman who married a stranger to save her honor, Kael pointed out with a smile. They reached the edge of Murrock territory on the afternoon of the 3rd day. Brenna stopped at a marker, a carved stone post driven into the ground and painted with orcish symbols, and took a deep breath. Beyond this point we are in clan lands, she said. There will be scouts watching. We will be challenged soon. What should I do when that happens? Kael asked. Let me do the talking, Brenna said. Show no fear but also no aggression. Do not reach for your weapons unless I do. And above all, do not back down if challenged directly. Weakness is despised, but measured strength is respected. They crossed the boundary and walked for perhaps another hour before the scouts found them. They materialized from the forest so silently that Kael jumped despite himself. 3 orc warriors, 2 male and 1 female, all armed and armored in hardened leather and bone plates. They were bigger than Brenna, more heavily muscled, and they looked at Kael with undisguised hostility. "Brenna Murrock," the lead male said, his voice a deep rumble. "You dare return. You were cast out. You have no right to be here." "I return as Brenna Orson, bonded wife with a husband at my side," Brenna said, her voice strong and clear. "By clan law, my honor is restored. I have the right to petition for entrance." The scouts looked at Kael with new interest, evaluating him like they might evaluate livestock. "This is your husband, this small human, he is," Brenna said. "And he has faced down threats with more courage than many warriors twice his size. Show respect." The female scout snorted. "We will see." "Come. The chieftain will decide your fate." They were escorted deeper into the mountains, and Kael got his first real look at an orc settlement. It was nothing like a human village, no neat houses or organized streets. Instead, it was a chaotic collection of caves, lean toss and rough wooden structures clustered around a central area where a large fire burned constantly. Orcs of all ages stopped what they were doing to stare as Brenna and Kael passed, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open anger. The chieftain's cave was the largest, its entrance flanked by 2 enormous guards who made even the scouts look small. Inside, the space opened up into a natural cavern illuminated by torches. At the far end, sitting on a throne made of carved stone and draped furs, was Chieftain Gorthan. He was massive, easily 7.5 feet tall and broad as a barn door, his green skin crisscrossed with scars that spoke of countless battles. His tusks were long and yellowed with age, and his eyes were the color of old steel. Beside him stood a woman who could only be Brenna's mother, Karga, smaller than the chieftain but still imposing, her face a harder, older version of Brenna's. "So," Gorthan rumbled, his voice like grinding rocks, "the exile returns, and she brings a pet human. This should be entertaining." Brenna stepped forward, and Kael was proud to see that she did not bow or cower. She stood straight and proud, every inch a warrior despite having been cast out. "Chieftain, I return as a bonded wife. My marriage has been witnessed and sealed by both orc and human law. My honor is restored. I request permission to enter clan lands and to see my sister." "Your sister," Gorthan said, leaning forward. "Interesting that you mention her. Tell me, Brenna Orson, do you know what has happened since you left?" Dread pooled in Kael's stomach at the chieftain's tone. Brenna's hands clenched into fists. "I know only what I saw in a dream," she said. "Thora calling for me, frightened. I have come to help her if I can." "She is to be married," Karga spoke for the first time, her voice cold, "to Gramak, the warrior you refused. Since you would not have him, he chose your sister instead." Brenna went very still. "Thora is barely 16, too young for bonding." "She is old enough by clan law," Gorthan said. "Gramak has claimed her, and I have approved the match. They will be bonded at the next full moon, which is 3 days hence." "You cannot do this," Brenna said, and there was anguish in her voice now. "Gramak is a monster. He will hurt her. He will break her. Thora is gentle, not made for a warrior's life. Please, chieftain, I beg you to reconsider." "Begging," Gorthan's laugh was cruel. "From the same Brenna who defied me by refusing Gramak, who called our ways barbaric and chose exile over obedience. You have no right to beg, no right to interfere. Your sister's fate is sealed." Kael saw Brenna struggling, torn between her love for her sister and the absolute authority the chieftain wielded. He made a decision, stepped forward before he could reconsider, and spoke. "I challenge that decision," he said clearly. Every orc in the cave turned to stare at him. The silence was deafening. You challenge me, Gorthon said slowly, incredulously. You, a human, challenge an orc chieftain. Not you directly, Kael said, his heart hammering but his voice steady. I challenge Gromak for the right to choose Thora's husband. By orc law, if I understand correctly, such challenges are allowed. You understand nothing, Gorthon said, but there was interest in his eyes now. Gromak is a seasoned warrior. You are a farmer. He would kill you in seconds. Maybe, Kael agreed, but I'm still willing to fight. Unless orc law doesn't actually allow for challenges. Unless your strength-based society is just talk. He was gambling everything on this, on his limited understanding of orcish culture and his read of the chieftain's character. Gorthon valued strength and courage above all else. Would he respect the challenge even from a human? The chieftain studied Kael for a long moment, then threw back his head and laughed. You have spine, human. I will give you that. Very well. I accept your challenge on Gromak's behalf. The fight will take place tomorrow at dawn in the challenge circle. If you win, you may choose Thora's husband. If you lose, you die and Brenna becomes clan property to do with as I please. No, Brenna shouted. Kael, what have you done? What I had to, Kael said quietly. I couldn't let your sister be forced into that marriage without trying to stop it. You will die. Brenna grabbed his shoulders, her eyes wild. Gromak will tear you apart. Then help me, Kael said. You know how he fights. Teach me. We have until dawn. That's something. Gorthon waved a dismissive hand. Take them to the guest quarters. Let the human have his last night with his wife before he meets his fate. They were led to a small cave off the main cavern, bare except for some furs on the ground and a guttering torch. As soon as they were alone, Brenna rounded on Kael. That was incredibly foolish, brave but foolish. Gromak is a killer, Kael. He has trained his entire life for battle. You are a farmer who fought in a war years ago. You cannot win this. I have to try, Kael said. I couldn't stand by and watch your sister be forced into the same situation you ran from. Besides, I wasn't entirely a farmer before the war. I was a soldier and a pretty good one. I've killed men in combat, Brenna. I know how to fight. Fighting humans in formation warfare is nothing like facing an orc champion in single combat, Brenna said, but some of the panic was leaving her voice, replaced by grim calculation. Still, you are right that we must try. Let me see your stance. They spent the remaining hours until dawn in intense preparation. Brenna drilled Kael on fighting techniques, teaching him how to move against a larger opponent, where to strike for maximum effect, how to use his smaller size and presumably greater agility as advantages. She showed him Gromak's preferred attacks based on having watched him fight, pointing out patterns and tells. He is strong but not particularly fast, she said. He relies on overwhelming force. If you can avoid his initial rush, you might have a chance. Aim for joints, eyes, throat, anything that will slow him down or hurt his combat effectiveness. And whatever you do, do not let him grapple you. His strength is such that he could break your spine like a twig. As the first light of dawn began to creep into the cave, Brenna finally stopped the training and pulled Kael into a fierce embrace. I love you, she said fiercely. If you die today, know that I love you with everything I am. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Kael Orson. I love you too, Kael said, holding her tight. And I'm not planning on dying. I'm planning on winning this fight, choosing a better husband for your sister, and then taking you home to our farm where we belong. Such confidence, Brenna said, but her voice was thick with tears. Not confidence, Kael corrected. Hope, and sometimes hope is enough. The challenge circle was a cleared area at the center of the settlement, a ring of stones marking its boundaries. Every orc in the clan had gathered to watch, forming a dense crowd around the circle. Kael could feel their eyes on him, most of them clearly expecting to watch a human die. Gromek was already in the circle, warming up with stretches and mock strikes. He was every bit as imposing as Brenna had warned, a mountain of muscle and anger with scars that suggested he had survived more fights than Kael had years of life. When he saw Kael approaching, he grinned, his large tusks gleaming. "The human comes to die," Gromek called out. "This will be over quickly." "We'll see," Kael said, trying to project more calm than he felt. Chieftain Gorthon stood at the edge of the circle. "The challenge is accepted and witnessed. Fight until one yields or dies. Begin." Gromek charged immediately, exactly as Brenna had predicted. It was like watching an avalanche come at you, terrifying and seemingly unstoppable. But Kael had been training all night for exactly this. He dove to the side at the last possible second, rolling to his feet as Gromek barreled past. The orc warrior spun with surprising speed for his size, but Kael had already moved again, keeping the circle between them. He needed to make Gromek tire himself out with these charges, needed to wait for the right opportunity. 3 more times Gromek rushed him, and 3 more times Kael evaded, though the last one was so close he felt the wind of the orcs passing. The crowd was starting to murmur, perhaps surprised that the human had survived even this long. "Stand and fight, coward." Gromek roared, frustration evident. "I am fighting," Kael called back. "Just not stupidly." That enraged Gromek enough that his next charge was wilder, less controlled. Kael waited until the orc was almost on him, then dropped low and swept his leg out, catching Gromek's ankle. It was like trying to trip a boulder, but combined with the orc's momentum, it was enough. Gromek stumbled, crashed to the ground hard enough to shake the earth. Kael was on him instantly, driving his knee into the orc's kidney while reaching for the knife at his belt. But Gromek was not helpless even on the ground. One massive arm swung around and caught Kael across the chest, sending him flying. He hit the ground hard, the breath knocked out of him, stars exploding across his vision. Through the haze, he saw Gromek getting up, blood on his face from where it had hit a rock. The orc was enraged now, all technique abandoned for pure fury. He came at Kael in a blind rush, and this time when Kael tried to dodge, his bruised body was too slow. Gromek's hand closed around Kael's throat, lifting him off the ground. Kael's feet kicked uselessly as his air supply was cut off. He could see the triumph in Gromek's eyes, could hear Brenna screaming his name from the crowd. This was it. He was going to die. No. With the last of his strength, Kael drove both thumbs into Gromek's eyes. The orc howled and dropped him, staggering back with his hands covering his face. Kael hit the ground gasping, his throat on fire, but he forced himself to move. He grabbed a rock from the circle's edge, a stone the size of his fist, and as Gromek lowered his hand, still half blind, Kael swung the rock with every ounce of strength he had left. It connected with Gromek's temple with a sickening crack. The huge orc swayed, his eyes losing focus. Kael hit him again and again until Gromek finally fell like a toppled tree, unconscious before he hit the ground. Kael stood over his fallen opponent, rock still in hand, breathing like a bellows. Every part of him hurt, but he was alive. He had won. The circle was absolutely silent. Then Chieftain Gorthon began to laugh, a booming sound that echoed off the mountains. "Incredible! The human wins! I have never seen such a thing," the crowd erupted, some orcs cheering, some shouting in disbelief, some arguing about what had just happened. Brenna shoved through them all and crashed into Kael, nearly knocking him down again with the force of her embrace. "You did it," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "You actually did it." "I told you I was planning to win," Kael said. Though his voice came out as more of a croak due to his bruised throat, Gorthon approached, still grinning. "Well fought, human. You have earned your victory and the right that comes with it. Choose a husband for Thora if you can find one willing." Kael looked around at the assembled clan, his eyes searching until he found a young orc standing at the edge of the crowd. He was smaller than most of the warriors, his frame more wiry than bulky, and he was staring at someone in the crowd with open longing. Kael followed his gaze and saw Thora, a younger version of Brenna with the same amber eyes and delicate tusks, staring back at the young orc with identical longing. "That one," Kael said, pointing. "What's your name?" The young orc startled. "Corton, honored victor." "Corton, do you care for Thora?" "I do," Corton said, his voice gaining strength. "I have cared for her since we were children, but I am not a great warrior. I had no right to claim her." "You do now," Kael said. "By right of my victory, I choose you as Thora's husband. Do you accept?" "Yes." Corton said immediately. "1,000 times yes, Thora," Kael called. "Is this acceptable to you?" The young orc woman was crying openly. "Yes, please, yes," Gorthon nodded slowly. "An interesting choice. Corton is of good family, honest and loyal if not strong. The match is acceptable. Let it be witnessed. Thora and Corton will be bonded as the next full moon." The young orcs rushed to each other, embracing in front of everyone, and Kael felt satisfaction warm him despite his pain. He had done what he came to do. Thora would not be forced into a cruel marriage. Maybe, just maybe, she would be happy. Brenna's mother Karga approached them, her expression unreadable. For a long moment she just studied Kael, then she turned to her daughter. "You chose well, Brenna," she said quietly. "This human has more courage and honor than many orcs. I was wrong to force the choice I did. I should have stood with you against Gramak. I am sorry." Brenna's face crumpled, years of hurt and anger and love all warring in her expression. Then she embraced her mother, and Karga held her tight, both of them weeping openly. "Come back to visit sometimes," Karga said when they finally pulled apart. "Both of you, you will always have a place here if you wish it." "We will," Brenna promised. They stayed 3 more days, healing Kael's injuries with poultices and orcish medicine, attending Thora and Corton's bonding ceremony, and allowing Brenna to reconnect with the sister and mother she thought she had lost forever. Kael was treated with a respect that bordered on reverence by many of the clan members, his victory over Gramak having earned him status few humans ever achieved. But on the 4th day, they prepared to leave. The farm was waiting, and neither of them truly belonged in the clan. Their home was elsewhere now. Thora hugged Brenna fiercely. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for everything." "Take care of each other," Brenna said, including Corton in her gaze. "Be happy. That is the greatest revenge against those who tried to force you into cruelty." The journey home took 4 days, Kael's injuries slowing their pace, but they did not mind. They walked hand in hand, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the winter ahead. They discussed expanding the farm in spring, perhaps getting some goats or pigs. They talked about the friends they had made in the village and the life they were building together. When they finally crested the last hill and saw their farm spread out below them in the late afternoon sun, Kael felt something in his chest loosen and settle. "Home," he said simply. "Home," Brenna agreed, and they walked down together to the life they had chosen. Winter came with snow and cold winds, but the house stayed warm, and the work never ceased entirely. Kael and Brenna took turns with the daily chores, spent evenings by the fire telling stories or playing simple games, and made love in their big bed while the world froze outside their walls. The village continued to accept Brenna, and by midwinter, she was a fully integrated member of the community. She helped Martha with healing work, learning to combine orcish and human medicine. She taught Sarah how to make a dense, hearty bread that kept longer than normal loaves. She even started teaching some of the village children basic self-defense, and parents were surprised to find that the big orc woman was patient and gentle with little ones. Luke Harris remained hostile, but his influence waned as more people came to know and respect Brenna. By the spring thaw, he was largely isolated in his hatred, and even he seemed to have given up on active hostility, settling for a cold avoidance that Kael and Brenna could live with. On the anniversary of the day, Brenna had walked into the Dusty Horn Tavern demanding a husband. They held a small celebration. Martha, Sarah, Thomas and his family, Father Marcus, and several other friends gathered at the farm for food and drink and stories. As the sun set and people began to head home, Kael and Brenna stood by their door, watching the last of their guests disappear down the road. 1 year, Brenna said softly. 1 year since I was cast out and desperate. 1 year since you set down your cup and said, "Why not me?" "Best decision I ever made," Kael said, pulling her close. "Same," Brenna said. She looked down at him, love shining clearly in her amber eyes. "I have something to tell you." "Oh, I am with child," she said, her voice trembling slightly with joy and nervousness. "The healer confirmed it yesterday. We will have a baby by early autumn." Kael's eyes widened, joy flooding through him so intensely it was almost painful. "A baby, truly, truly," Brenna confirmed. Kael let out a whoop of joy and spun her around, which given their size difference was more of a rotation than anything, but they did not care. When he set her down, they were both laughing. "I hope it has your strength," Kael said. "I hope it has your kindness," Brenna countered. "Either way, it will be loved," Kael promised. "So incredibly loved." They went inside as the stars began to appear, closing the door on the world and opening themselves to the future. And in that moment, in that place, they were perfectly, completely happy. The baby, when she arrived in early autumn as predicted, was a beautiful blend of both parents. She had Brenna's green skin, but Kael's dark hair. She had Kael's nose, but Brenna's amber eyes. She had tiny tusks that would grow larger as she aged, and already showed the promise of considerable strength. They named her Kara, and she became the light of their lives. As the years passed, the farm prospered. More children came, 3 more in total, each unique and loved. The village that had once viewed orcs with fear and hatred learned through Brenna and her family that such prejudices were foolish and wrong. Intermarriage between humans and orcs became more common, and peace settled over the region in a way it never had before. Kael and Brenna grew old together, their love deepening with each passing season. On quiet evenings, they would sit on their porch and watch their grandchildren playing in the fields, and they would remember that day in the tavern when a desperate orc woman had demanded a husband, and a lonely human man had set down his cup and changed both their lives forever. No regrets. Kael would ask sometimes, though he knew the answer. "None," Brenna would always reply. "You." "Not a single one," Kael would say, and he would take her hand, and they would sit together in the twilight, grateful beyond measure for the life they had built from a moment of desperation and courage and unexpected love. And they lived, if not happily ever after, because life was never quite that simple, then at least happily enough, which was far more than either of them had ever dared to hope for on that fateful day when their paths first crossed.